Howdy folks, welcome back to the channel. 71 CB750. Let's go ahead and dig right into it. Build date is 7 of 70, and so it's pretty early 71. So this would be a K1, I believe. And this is a nice original CB750 according to the owner. Now whatever I say here, because I keep getting feedback in the comment sections, oh that's not original, it's reproduction, whatever. I'm going to give you the story of what the customer told me. Please don't put in the comments, no, because I'm not saying it, I'm telling you what he told me. Came out of California originally. Some guy named Charlie, who's like a CB750 guru or something, I don't know who the hell it is, worked on it for him. I don't know if he lived out there. I think he had it shipped here. I'm not 100% sure about all that. But he said it's original, and it looks like it is. And so he wants several things done to it, which we'll cover here in this video. I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview of it. As far as the bodywork goes, I'll tell you what we are doing. In that box over there, and you can see the old one right there. He's got, I guess you consider them reproduction from YAMIA 750.com. There's 2 side covers. I have to get the logos off and put them on them if I can. And a headlight bucket and 2 fork dealios, these guys that are all the same color red as these are. He's also got a brand new tank because this one's got a sticker, not a sticker, a decal that's kind of folding up on it. Supposed to be painted and clear coated over, allegedly, that's what he said. Now that tank is up in Tampa right now getting it lined because you can't, right in the instructions from YAMIA there, it says you need to line it. And I know of a guy up there, so since the customer had to go right by there going home, he dropped it off and I'll go up and pick it up when it's done. But anyway, so it's getting a new tank. I'll do this, I'll do that, and I'll do the side covers. And he said that the exhaust is original. It sure looks like it is. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm no expert on originality when it comes to that stuff, but I'm just going off of what he told me. What he gave me on his list was the things I've already told you about switching out bodywork and so forth. And he wants a service on it, which I'm not going to film, but he says he's got some problem with the carbs and it doesn't run right. He said it was hard to start. And I started it up yesterday, it started pretty quick. So I'll set you up in the stand, let's do that first. I'm gonna go over this side and turn the ignition on and give it a little choke. I forgot to turn the fuel on over there. And I'm gonna put it all the way on reserve just in case. I've already checked the oil, I did that yesterday. Contact. Okay, I'm gonna take the choke off. How about half choke? Compromise. Well, it started easier yesterday. That's weird. Full choke. 1/3. How's that? Sort of likes that. Take it off all the way. I can't really get it to idle. Wouldn't idle yesterday either. Trying to warm it up a little bit. Choke is off, by the way. Yeah, it just does not want to idle. Okay, I'm going to turn the idle adjuster up a little bit. See if we can get it to idle a little bit better and hear it. Maybe that's too much. You think? Yeah, I got the, well, it's not warmed up yet, obviously, but choke is off. Turn the idle down a little bit. Sounds synchronized. All right, you get the picture. And also, even when it's sitting here, it smells gassy with the gas turned off, with the fuel turned off at the petcock. It smells gassy. And we are off. Yeah, so it smells gassy. He said it did run really well, but then that was, I guess, over in California. When he had it shipped here, something happened and it stopped running. I don't know how long it sat in the meantime, I don't know. As far as the backstory goes, it doesn't matter too much, because what we're seeing here is it just doesn't run right. He said there's a new air filter in it. We'll verify all that. All these carb holders are new. The air side, intake side is new as far as the rubber goes, or newer. And it looks pretty good, so I would say it's probably true. But I can tell you one thing, with the fuel off, we got a couple of little drips out where these overflow tubes consolidate and directly underneath there. So that leads me to believe that we've got a float level issue right off the bat. And so most likely, I think the best course of action is going to be, like I normally do, is just snatch the carbs off, because I don't know what I'm dealing with. So we're going to end up pulling the carbs off. Let's let it cool off a little while. We'll pull the carbs off, put them over on the bench, and kind of go through them and see what's going on. Because, I mean, I could throw a synchronizer on it right now and see, but with that thing, let's pull it off here and see what we got going on. I have a feeling there may be bad fuel in here in these bottoms of these float bowls. Just got a feeling. I don't want to break these hoses, but being a little tight. See what that one looks like. I'm going to take the other two off and I'll report back. I mean, I can take a float bowl off just by popping the basket holder away anyway and just take it off. But I think I'm just going to pull them. Also, he's got a concern about the clutch. What his complaint is that the thing goes into gear hard. I tested it yesterday and it does clunk pretty hard. So I asked him if it was the original clutch. He said he's pretty sure it was. And these screws do not look like they've ever been taken out. Unless he's completely mistaken on this and this has been a restoration at some point, which I don't know. I got to go off of what he tells me. I would say that there's a good possibility this thing needs a clutch pack, because the Magna did the same thing with the original clutch that was in it. What happens is the friction material starts to actually decompensate, and, well, decompensate is not the word, almost disintegrate. And you get little particles, you can feel them when you rub the oil between your fingers. And what that does, of course, it increases the surface area between the discs and the space between the discs, because it doesn't always, go away, and it continues to deteriorate. And what that does is it makes a dragging clutch. And again, I had the exact situation in the Magna. I threw a brand new aftermarket clutch in, perfect. We'll pull the carbs off and see what we need for them, if anything. Then we'll order some parts and we'll come back to it. So this isn't a terribly big job. All right, folks, next day, and I've had some time to think about this, and we're going to have a change in plans here. We crawl before we walk. Now, normally I do that anyway, but yesterday when I said we're just going to pull the carbs, I think we're premature in that. So I obviously drained the tank and removed it, set it aside. I'm not sure if that's an OEM petcock or not. It sure looks like it, but reserve on, off. It didn't bypass, luckily. So the first thing I noticed when I take tank off is there's no return throttle cable. I should have seen this yesterday, but there ain't no return throttle cable. It's only the pull. I don't know why it's got the place for it. So we'll probably have to remedy that. And the other thing, well, I did know about this already. The other thing is it's got fuel filters in line. You really don't want to do that. And I mentioned this on numerous videos. You really don't want to put fuel filters in line where they're not designed. And I looked on the parts fish already. There are none listed on the parts fish. So that's going to be a restriction for fuel flow in virtually any situation where you have gravity feed. And also these lines are way too long. So what you have there is a leak. Wait a minute. What is going on here? That didn't run all the way down the side of this. Well, there you go. This fuel filter looks like it's compromised anyway. Little melt spot from sitting against the side of the head. Probably one of the fins. Now, you're really not supposed, you shouldn't use these. All right, you shouldn't use them in a gravity feed because they're not designed to be there and they'll restrict flow. And the fuel cock, as I showed you just up there, is really supposed to provide the filtration. Now, once I take that out, since we're putting a new tank on anyway, we'll see how that is. The inside of the tank is not great. but it doesn't seem to have a lot of shit floating around. I'm gonna off-camera drain all 4 carbs, and we're gonna go ahead and just pop the float bowls. You know, it's got that little basket clamp type. Probably should do a compression test on this. Thing's got 18,948 miles, I guess. So I would expect it to be good, but it's probably a good idea to do anyway, just to give us a baseline. So I think we're gonna do all that. But let's go ahead and pop the, after I drain the carbs, we'll pull the float bowls off. There's no reason why we can't do that before we do anything else. All right, here's number 4. There is a little bit of crud in the bottom of it. I think you can see it. Let me see if I can touch it a little bit. Reach out and touch someone. There is a little bit of crud down in there. Now this is the fuel that came out of all 4 in a clean coffee cup. It is kind of cloudy. Maybe it's got some water in it. But it smells fine, so I'm not really sure. Now again, the tank is a little bit crusty, but is that like, this really is a rust color, you know, it's a color of rust. So I'm thinking that this is just a very, you know, rust particulate type thing with some bigger chunks. There are some bigger chunks in here, you just can't see them because of the cloudiness. When I first took number 4, I drained number 4 first, so that was probably why that was the case, if this was the worst one. Anyway, I'll take the other 3 off, show you. Number 3, pretty much same situation. Number 2, just some fine shit in the bottom, the very bottom there. And number 1, same thing, except you can see some heavier particulate at the very bottom of it. You see that? A little bit of piece there. There's some crud in these carbs, no question, but it's certainly isn't that bad. Took the bottom of the air box off. Look at the air filter. Not terrible. What I do this for is to see if there's anything fragmenting that might be getting to the air jets. But, you know, we can just take the upper air box off and look right into the back of the carbs. It's one beauty of this thing, I think at least. I mean, I haven't worked on one of these that hasn't been molested in a long time. But, you know, it's not terrible. Let's see, 03 April. Is that 2003? And it is an MGO, yeah. Well, if that's correct, that probably needs to be replaced. So we'll look into that, but, you know, just a good practice thing. So anyway, yeah, it's not terrible, but, you know, it's something I always check because I want to get an idea, you know, what's going on. Well, you know, this one's so easy to get the air box off, we might just do it, but, yeah, these are not the cleanest things on the planet as far as carbs go. There's your air jets on the back here. Remember, these carburetors rather don't have a fuel screw, they have an air screw, just like the OKZs. So we don't adjust a fuel air mix, we adjust an air fuel mix when we sink these in. Yeah, I'm just gonna pull them because I really wanna set these down on the bench and absolutely positively make sure that all the ports are open. Watch some brake clean come through them, like do my normal stuff. We know for sure because they're so easy to do. We're talking minutes instead of an hour or so on some carb racks in this case, so it makes sense to do it because it'll be very cost effective for the customer. So I'm going to do that off camera. Well, that's a new one on me. I had a band clamp. The head snapped right off the screw. This is number 1. There's the head right there. I've never seen that before, but all 4 of them have been modified. They apparently were too short. And first I looked at this and went, geez, did I work on this bike at one time? Because that's something I would do, except I looked at this one and said, yeah, no. I believe this one was off number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and source some proper band clamps for it if I don't already have them, because we don't need that. And the other ones weren't very easy to get off easy either. I don't really know why. Super freaking tightened, and I think the threads got damaged, like stretched. Well, this one you can see looks almost bent, doesn't it? Yeah, but I never had one snap off like that, you know. That's a new one on me. I've had the head strip many times, but even with JIS tools, but not that. I'm doing this out of order because of the angles. I'm gonna get those done first, and then we'll do the easy ones. So this is number 3. Contact. $150. Number 2. So basically 150 across the board, plus or minus a couple PSI. Now for the two easy ones. 1 and 4 are a dream, but those inner ones are just a pain. All right, so number 1. Yeah, we're looking at about the same. Yeah, this is a healthy motor so far, but you know, I want to know a baseline. He wants to do a valve clearance check, and that's one reason. God, that thing's hard to get off. One reason why I wanted to do well, I suggested a valve clearance check. He said okay, because when they were ticking a little bit, he said, well, when it warms up, it goes away, and that's probably the case. There's probably one that's a little bit loose. But you know, since it's stem and nut, you just take caps off pretty quick. So let me go to the other side, and we'll get number 4. We'll bring you back starboard for the last one. Oh yeah, this thing is almost dead nuts. 150 PSI across the board, so I'm sure that is perfect. I'm really glad I did that because now I know what I'm really dealing with. Super healthy motor. And by the way, yes, I did blow out the spark plug holes before I took them out. As far as you know, we just want to cover up the holes and make sure nothing falls in. Whenever I take carbs off, I always look into the bores. Now, you have to look through these rubber guys because I just don't want to take them off right now. I will, because these being clamps, by the way, are modified the same ones as the other ones, so we'll be ordering 8. But anyway, I always look down these intakes and take a look at the intake valve, whichever one, or ones, depending on the engine you can see. And it just gives you a good example how the thing's been running. And I can't get in there too far, but you get an idea. I mean, this thing's been running clean. Like on my Magna, it looks like brand new in there. Shiny aluminum. I mean, it looks perfect. And this one does too. This one looks pretty well. As far as the spark plugs go, I meant to tell you that. This is number 2. Not bad. Number 3 was the, I'm sorry, number 2 rather, was the one, was it 2? Yeah, number 2 was like the wettest. It had moisture on it. It may have been running rich. The other 3 were not. This is number 1. That seems to have probably been running a little bit hot actually. And maybe a little lean. And this is number 3. There we go, 3. Not bad. I mean, I can't really say lean or rich because there are signs of a little bit of both. Perhaps some detonation even. And you know what, with this fuel, that's suspect. So the tank fuel doesn't look like that. It was only what was in the carbs. This does not really look like water. It's not setting up like water. I think that's rust because of what I saw in the float bowls, and I think what's coming out of that tank, very fine rust particulate that can get through the filtering. I think that color is rust, not water. Good idea that he's replacing his tank, and I think it was a good idea we pulled the carbs ultimately. All right, folks, next day. I've been taking my time on these. I got other things to do. Let's take a quick look at them. Like I said before, they look pretty good. The flow bowl gaskets look pretty good. Probably not going to need to replace them. Fuel cock be over this side because it's on the right side of the tank. I'd prefer to have these to come down in instead of these really long ones doing this. Or in this case, this. Because sometimes it'll develop an air dam and you won't get good flow, so the fuel's got to climb up. And you know, what's the fuel pressure of fuel mere several inches above the float bowls in a fuel tank? It's probably measured in the millipounds. Is that a unit of measurement? I mean, it's not a whole lot of pressure. Looks like somebody was in here and changed these O-rings out because on the back side of the fuel of the rack rather, these screws look like they have been taken out and put back in. So I think somebody has split this rack, which is great. I'm going to take all the jets out, all the floats out, and then we'll come back. We'll take a look at what everything looks like. I keep forgetting to tell you something. I got to tell you right now. Remember that shot I did of the fuel that was all cloudy in the coffee cup? Well, I drained like all but about a quarter inch out of it. The fuel definitely had water in it. So the fuel in the carbs is contaminated, but it didn't smell bad. And the fuel in the tank looks pretty good. As far as the carbs go so far, they look perfect. There's no problem with it. I only checked the float level here on number 1 at the moment because I took the other 3 out, and I wanted to show you what I did find is, you know, this is incidental really, but the bottom line is it's indicative of a possible problem here. And of course you got the crud that's built up around a float needle. So it's probably in the seat too. I think this came out of number 2 rather. I already took the main jet, well this really is the entire main jet assembly, really, the emulsion tube, and then you have the needle jet. I call it the needle jet really up to here, and then the main jet at the end. I took these guys out, which historically would be an emulsion tube. Perfectly clean, but I cleaned them anyway, and everything looks fine. I put them right back in because I don't want to take a chance of those needle jets coming out. So what I need to do now is I'm going to pull the seats out because they are screw-in with aluminum sealing washers. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these carbs because once I saw the water in that gas and contaminants or whatever the hell was in there, we're just going to do a quick clean verification. I wanted to check the float needles because I do believe that at least one, if not all of them, are suspect. For example, let me show you that. If you take another one out and it doesn't look all crudded up, the problem with it is you can see that there's a little bit of a line there, being that these are the hard tip types. I'm going to probably just try to replace those if I have them in stock. If not, I'm going to order them and replace them anyway. Seats are most likely good though. I'll polish them out. So like I said, I'm going to do that stuff, but I will bring it back when we do the air jets and kind of flush things through. Getting ready to do this, what I said before, and I saw something else I wanted to show you. Take a look at the fuel T inlets. There's 2 of them. Is kind of crusty. Now I don't think that goes too terribly deep into the T itself. It looks like it's just at the end. This one's the same way. See the crustiness there? So what's happened is it's gotten some moisture in this fuel, or maybe just some condensation at the level of the carburetors and the fuel hose itself, and nothing, you know, perhaps in the tank. Could be in the tank too. I don't know. Speculating as far as that goes, but the point is here is that you have a corrosion on these T's. Down deep in the seats there, it looks fine where those go. A little piece of that breaks off, goes up in the carb, plugs up your slow jet, and then you got problems. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to clean that out. We'll blow it out and flush it out. All right, folks, we got that solved. It's no biggie. You know, I wanted to show it to you, but it's kind of difficult. I'll show you this instead. This is the gunk that came out of the one between 1 and 2. What I did was I just tore off a little of the Q-tip edge, or the Q-tip fatness, if you will, thickness, to get down inside there with some brass. So I'll probably just zoom up on that in editing because you can see it's pretty clear now. That one is equally nice. You can see right down the bottom of there, it definitely is brass. You can see the color. So that needed to be done, but I'll put a little B-roll as I'm talking here of the brake clean in the bottom of this pan, and that was the only thing I cleaned was these fuel T's, and then flushed it out in here and all the crap that came out with it. So there was definitely some junk in there. I'm confident that it is gone now. So let's talk about the circuits really quick. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these carbs. The circuits on these are pretty simple. As far as air jets go, since it's got an air screw, there's the air jet for the slow circuit, because that air screw is what contributes to control on the airflow relative to a particular fuel charge on the pilot or slow circuit. So there's your air inlet at least, and not necessarily a jet because it's just an open hole. But we're going to take these out, of course. We're going to spray all this through and make sure it flows. Ergo, that means that the other one must be a main. Now you can trace that through. You can see that, see the jet there, all right? Now we turn it. You see that angled piece right there, that angled piece at about 1 o'clock and heading toward the main. Well, there you go. There's your main air jet. So you can just trace these things and see where they go. There's only 2 jets on the back inlet side of the carb. Like I said, I'm going to blow these things out. We'll take the slow screws out, or the air screws out. I called them the wrong thing there. They are supposed to be between 1 and 1 1/8 turn out, which is what I would expect these to be. That's what they're supposed to be. What these are at, I do not know yet. I haven't taken them out. So let's do 1 on camera, and then the rest of this stuff I'm going to do off camera. So let's turn it in first. Half, 1 turn exactly. So these are set exactly where they should be. Now, jetting wise, this is kind of interesting. Service manual says that the mains are supposed to be 140 and 120 rather, and the slows are supposed to be 40. So 120 for the mains and 40 for the slows. I can't get that out without a damn thing. So let me just turn this way while I'm talking. So there's that spring, good. What this has is 125s and 45s, which is interesting. I'm not really sure why, but I haven't really dedicated a lot of time to it, but can't really find any reference to why that would be jetted a little bit higher. Off camera, I'm gonna blow these through. Actually, I'll show you one to see where it comes out, and then we'll do the rest of it and I'll get these back together. So we're just going to throw some through this slow circuit. It's going to come right out the side there, of course. But if you notice, if I plug this up with my finger while I'm doing this, watch down in here where the slow jet goes. See how it's coming out there? If you have a CV carb, you're going to have the little, like 4 tiny little holes. In addition to the little hole that you have where the fuel screw, if it had one, goes up through. When you blow through these, not to get overcomplicated, just make sure you see it come out of all those. Make sure the little holes are clear, which we don't have on this carb. We've got this right there is a tap for vacuum synchronization. So again, super, super simple carbs. The more complicated the carb, the more you gotta do. What else was I gonna tell you? It was something important. These band clamps, the ones that are welded together, I'm pretty sure I know why whoever did this. Because I started looking for these this morning. You can find black ones all day long. But these guys here, I don't even think these are right because they're not supposed to have a lip on the edge of it. You see that little lip? The ones I can find under Honda OEM part number are dead flat across. They're just actual band clamps. I can get them from a seller on eBay. I would need 8 of them. They're like 21 bucks a piece. They're real proud of those. So somebody put these together to probably save some money. But the problem is a couple of these are twisted up like this one. They were all pretty much seized, or not seized, but very tight. 2 of them were seized, as you saw, one of them broke. I'm gonna have no choice but to replace these. They're supposed to be the zinc ones, the zinc color, but I did find that. And these things are not tightening up all that well either. I mean, I can't turn it, but if I tried hard enough, I probably could. So they're not the right band clamps as far as how they work. They're definitely not right because they're super hard to get off. The threads are screwed up and one of them snapped. So that's what I want to show you. All right, we're failing a pressure test pretty significantly. Originally it was a massive failure. I traced it down to these little seals that seal off the float seats. But I have some in stock that are just a little bit thicker, so we'll just have to accommodate with the float level. I mean, they're only slightly thicker, but these little things are a piece of junk. What we're gonna do is, when I retested it, it's bypassing too significantly with the float needles itself. The seats look good, so we're gonna have to probably just replace the needles. I don't have any K-hins in stock to verify that. As far as the solid needles go, all I have is Makinis. I tried a pair of those in these 2 carbs and it didn't do any better. So it's because the taper on the needle is not the same. So these things are a special length that I don't have a set. And I cleaned them up really well as far as the tips go. I don't know, it may be, see there's just a little line there. I think I showed you before. So I think they're just not sealing right. I'm just gonna go ahead and replace them. They gotta be cheap enough. And then what we'll do at that point is retest. It shouldn't bleed down or, as far as the pressure goes, deteriorate that quick. Really, the pressure decay is way too fast. So that's where we're gonna leave it now. We'll cover everything up and I'll go order some parts. All right, folks, got some other stuff apart because we're waiting on parts for the carburetors, and I've done all my parts orders for everything on this bike that I know of at this point. We'll go over all that at that time when we're going to reassemble that stuff. As far as what's going on here is, and I failed to mention this in the earlier clips, is one of the customer complaints is an oil leak from this back left corner of the the crankcase. He said that he felt it was the shifter shaft seal. Now on this particular bike, the shifter shaft seal is indeed the shifter shaft seal that holds the little oil golden droplets in. On other bikes, it's an outer seal. The shaft is much longer, said the wife, and you have an inner seal and sometimes an outer seal or just a bushing, you know, like in the old KZs, it depends. This is a true oil seal. I'm gonna replace this too, but this one was not leaking. You gotta trust me. I know it looks wet now because of all the oil that came out taking this cover off. This thing was drier than a popcorn fart. It was definitely not this. All the oil seems to be coming from the counter shaft, transmission output shaft or the counter shaft. I'm pretty sure it's the seal behind there because it's got all the oil down inside here. There's no indication that the gasket was leaking, and all these screws were very tight. We'll check all the wires out off camera and make sure that's all good because, you know, while you're in here, why not, you know? And then deal with this. But we're gonna do this right now. I need to get our peepers on that seal back there. I bet you that's the situation.
That's bullshit.
You CB750 guys out there are screaming right now, and rightfully so. I did not realize that this had a self-oiling chain feature. This little guy right here is that doodad right there with a set screw. You turn it clockwise and it pushes on that rubber. This piece right here, and apparently can all but, and including stop the flow of oil, and it must go out that little hole right there. And lube the chain. Now I can't really tell you where that was. It seemed to be pretty snug in there to the right, but when I went to check it, it would not go right anymore, but when I turned it to the left counterclockwise, it did. So this thing may be malfunctioning. It may be bad, and somebody had already turned that oil flow all the way off by screwing it in, according to what I'm reading on forums at least. There is zero guidance for this. In the service manual, and I even found an owner's manual, it doesn't I can't find a damn word about this, which is really typical of these old service manuals. So I don't think there's a damn thing wrong with that seal. Folks, we are most definitely not going to touch that seal. Let me show you why. Let me show you why. I need an MRI. Gee whiz. Speak clearly. All right. Right down in here at 6 o'clock position, right along what appears to be the seam of some sort or this feature of the casting. That is epoxy. Somebody has blobbed some two-part epoxy up in that location at some point in time. It's hard to tell until you look down a little further and you can see right there where I'm pointing with the screwdriver, there's a couple of drips of it. There's a drip there and there's a drip there and a drip behind the camera. So right there you got evidence that somebody has blobbered up this thing at some point, probably because of maybe a crack, a leak of some sort, and it kind of goes around into that spot. I'm not sure what this little bump is underneath here. It looks almost like a broken off screw or something. I don't know. But we are going to stay away from this like it was a freaking virus. Plus, I don't believe the seal is changeable from our side of the world anyway, because it's got this bulge around the outside edge. You see that bulge? Kind of spreads out on the circumference right there. Now that typically is from when you have a seal that's installed with the case split. Then you squeeze it in with the case itself. You know, when you puts the bolts in the case, it squeezes in. And those seals usually have some sort of feature on the back side, like a little lip or something to keep them from coming out. So most likely they're not serviceable from this end. I got this seal coming for the shifter shaft cover, which wasn't leaking, but why not change it when the cover's out? It'd take 2 minutes. And we didn't have any problem with getting the gasket off, so that's not gonna add any time. So we'll just change the gasket, which is cheap, change the seal, which is cheap on that, just as a precautionary thing. And we can still check our wiring. So this is not a complete waste of time. I've already photographed this, and I'm gonna send an email to the customer explaining what I found about this blob right here. I do not know if, I'm gonna tell them I do not know if this seal is actually leaking, but I'm not doing anything with it. As soon as you start messing with that, you own it, and I'm not gonna own that one. Mama didn't raise no fool when it came to this crap. All right, folks, a number of days have gone by, and we have been kind of sidetracked by, well, I'll just show you some footage. We got smacked by Tropical Storm Debbie pretty good. According to the official rainfall, it's for Lakewood Ranch, which is right next to us. Lakewood Ranch got like almost 17 inches of rain, and that was like in a 30-hour period or something, maybe even less. We got a lot of water, standing water still, and I'm kind of picking at where I can actually get to the yard, excuse me, without sinking in the ground. Let's go ahead and give you an update. Where we're at in the carbs is they're pretty much done. I got the boot on number 1. I don't know where that went. I honestly didn't pay any attention to it when I took these out. I thought all of them were there. It's not laying on the floor here. I don't know where it is. I think it blew off on the trip down in an open trailer. I think whoever worked on these last didn't know how to put it on, or maybe forgot it when they put the carbs back together, and maybe just sliced in the back and shoved it over. It is a little bit tricky to get back on there. You got to go take the spring off, go full throttle, take the slide out, and kind of pull this forward and up. It's very similar to the Kawasaki round slides that have like a joint in here, so you can take the slides out in situ with these arms, then put a new one on, and you're done. I didn't like the, I tell you what, this is supposed to be OE stuff. The red on it was like gone. It was like coming off in a powder, so I cleaned all those up and took a red paint stick. Came out pretty good actually, just did all 4 of them. Anyway, as far as the carb innards go, on the last clips I did have a problem with it failing a pressure test miserably. So I got that taken care of by essentially replacing all the float needles and seats. Went with OEM, much better. I did 2 carbs at a time, pressurized them, each 2 I did of course, and it passed a pressure test no problem with the carbs upside down. I did do a static fuel test for about an hour and a half on these carbs. The first one went about a half hour, and then it started to overflow on number 2. So I took number 2 off, and nothing was out of sort. The float level looked good, so I just dropped the flow a little bit more. Went about another hour and a half with it total time on that second test. And so it's gotten 2 hours of static fuel test really. Did not overflow, so we're good there. So these are ready to go back on. I did clean up that area where the float bolts go into the bodies of the carbs with that red gooey glue that Honda likes to use on these. I wasn't gonna because it's been there 40 years, but I just couldn't help myself. I spent some time and got those all nice and cleaned up. I cleaned up the drain screws. They were all looking like shit. So overall, not bad. Got a little bit of time into them, but not terrible. And they're ready to go back on, like I said. So I think they're going to perform nicely, but we're not going to do that right now because we're just not up to it. I've had too much distraction with the storm and stuff, so we're just kind of catching up on what we're doing here on this particular bike. All right, folks, you know where we're at basically from, I caught you up before as far as the carbs and stuff go. And you already know the situation on the transmission side, so we're done there. I'll just catch you up real quick, and then what we're gonna end up doing is popping the carbs back in, giving it a fire up. We're gonna try to fire it up here in a little bit because I got everything done as far as putting all this back together. So when I put these together as far as wiring, I just follow the wiring diagram. I'm not really concerned on the first draft, if you will, as far as where the wires are laying and if it looks like a rat's nest or not. I just hook them up, make sure everything works, and then I go back and I take one connector apart at a time, reroute them to where they want to sit comfortably, and that also lets me double check to make sure the plugs are good as far as the connectivity, the physical connection. And once I do that, the headlights go back in. Now I did the clutch off camera as well, and I'll install some B-roll here. Include some B-roll on what I found with the clutch. There was some fragmentation you could feel between your fingers as far as the little pieces of the friction material, which is right over here, but it really wasn't all that excessive. So what mainly I found was, and I wish I had a surface plate, I did a complete shotgun of the clutch pack. When I took a couple of these inside on the glass top of the stove, which is pretty flat, and also the counter, which is pretty flat, there's a couple of these that are definitely warped, but they're not warped so much across the plane, they're more cupped. What I mean by that is they're kind of cupped this way. It's cupped like this and like that. So they definitely move. This is obviously not flat, but this is just to show you what I'm seeing inside on a relatively flat surface. Like I said, if I had a surface plate, I could tell you for sure, use a feeler gauge and stuff. But I've used that methodology before as far as these steel discs go on other clutches, you know, bring them inside when the wife's not looking, and then put them down the countertop and feel and see if they're rocking at all. And in the past, I've been able to see that other steel discs have been fine. So I'm pretty convinced that at least a few of these are warped. All right, we got some fuel hooked up to it. I don't have the synchronizer on right now. New air filter, everything's put back together. Valve clearance check is done. I checked the oil. Even though only 3 quarts have been added, it's actually a little bit above the mark. So the service manual does say to start it and then recheck it. So we're gonna do that, even though I did get the oil light to go out when I cranked it. Let's give it a shot. Contact. Got it on. Wants to try, and we may need more idle there. I don't know how much fuel is actually getting in here with this setup like this, but it should be okay. Contact. Running like shit. Yeah, we're gonna have to do the synchronization. That's sync. Oh yeah, one is like no vacuum at all according to this, no wonder. Three is way low. Not bad though, a lot better than before. It's definitely running all 4. Yeah, one was way too open. Yeah, let me start again. We'll tell you what we're going to do. Not terrible. Oh, by the way, I checked the timing. The timing is spot on. I'm going to tell you up front that I'm not entirely happy with the way it runs, but I'm going to do a cold start, let it warm up a little bit, and then we'll sit down and discuss it real quick, because pretty sure I have a direction in which to go. I still got the synchronizer hooked up, and I may switch the audio between the mic that I'm wearing and go kind of commando with the iPhone. That way you have a couple of different samples. So anyway, let me turn the fuel on, we'll get it fired up, and you can figure out what's going on from the sound of it most likely. It is still somewhat hard to start, which is another symptom that I think we're gonna address. Contact. Back it off the choke. I know it's cold, but it just does not want to run. I have the idle set from yesterday when it was warmed up, so it should be pretty, it should run some. Jeez. I'm going to turn the idle up just to get to run for a while. Let it warm up. I got to do a little bit more tweaking, but they're pretty close. These are like the old style that never seem to hold a good sync, you know, with the round slide, but they're pretty close. It'll be better when it warms up and I get the idle down where it's supposed to be. Got plenty of gas. I rerouted the fuel lines over to the side where it's supposed to be. Try to make sure we got gas in there. We're at 1240 RPM, 1280. That's too high. It's starting to warm up. $11.40. Should be, I think, around 1100 or so. 1050, something like that. Okay, as it warms up now, you'll notice starting to misfire a little bit at the desired idle or close to it. Pops a little bit. So whenever you have the idle set where it wants to be, and I know again the sync's a little bit off, but it ain't that far off. It's hunting. Doesn't seem to have enough fuel. We just come off and crack it. Stumbles a little bit. Right there you can really tell. And that sync is pretty good right there. Alright, we'll shut it off at that point. Hopefully I got enough footage to show you. I'm going to go ahead and take everything off, and because I'm not going to be doing any more on it today, and we'll sit down and have a quick discussion as to what I think's going on. We'll go over some theory and go over some other stuff in regards to things that I've done to try to make, try to mitigate this, to correct it. All right, folks, I had an entirely different ending. Latter part of this video already filmed and edited that was actually quite lengthy. It had to do with a lot of carb theory and things like that that I thought you might enjoy, because it's relative to why this thing, in my opinion, and my theories of why I was running lean and at idle. I think we'll save that for another video. What I'm going to tell you right now is that I did two things to this. I found a problem in the fuels, the air screws, and then I found a problem, a suspected problem, I should say. I'm going to have to explain it. You're going to have to bear with me on that part of it. And then I ultimately did bump the slow jets up from 42 to 45. And I'm going to show you those clips here momentarily. The first of the two clips is after taking care of the air screw issue, the suspected air screw issue. Like I said, it gets a little complicated, but I'll try to be as concise as possible. And then the second clip is the final running, where it actually runs really well. So let's get right to the air screw thing first. That's not blood, that's paint. Trust me, as far as you know. Okay, here are the two air screws in question. The one on the right is the air screw that was in there. The one on the left came out of an aftermarket kit from 4into1.com. This is the screw I'm using right now. Now what I did was I took a look at this, and I really had never seen an air screw that had jet-like qualities with a cross hole and a hole down the center of it as well, up to the cross hole. Never seen one like this before. And when you looked into the back of the carburetor, since it's right next to the inlet hole there, essentially would be a slow air jet, really. It's not an air jet, but just a hole. You can see that hole right there depending on how it's clocked. So I suspect that I should say that this is the incorrect air jet for these carburetors, but I wanted to prove it. So the first thing I do in these situations is I go right to the parts fiche and I take a look and see what the parts fiche calls for. Now in these older bikes that can be somewhat tricky because sometimes you can't get good visual confirmation of the part. They don't have it listed when you click on the part, which is the case in this situation. And there's some other factors as well that make that a little bit problematic, I should say. That's probably the best word. So let me go over it this way. In the K0, which is the first year, or simply the 750K, these part numbers, all three of them here, are a 5-digit, dash 3-digit, dash 3-digit. I'm only going to give you the last three because these are all the same. So on a K0, the last three on an air screw rather, is 004. Now if you Google this entire number and look that up, it comes up with an air screw that doesn't look like either of these two. It has a little bit of a different shape to it, and it does not have a hole, and it's more solid like that. So I just wanted to look at that for a reference. What we have here is a K1, of course, and the last three on that one is 014. When you look up the full spread of the digits, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 digits with a 014, comes up with this one. It looks exactly like this one from the aftermarket kit. There are a couple of eBay ads that show this one as being that one, but there's a preponderance of them in original packaging, new old stock air screws that show it exactly like this, and it's pretty clear to see that it does not have any holes in it. Now that brings us to a K2. The K2 last three digits is 024. So again, if you Google this entire number spread here with the 024 instead of the 014, you come up with this one with the hole. Now again, it switches back where some sellers are having this one you see, but there's a preponderance rather on the 024 to have the one with the hole. I think even on the CMS NL site. So this looks like it's for the K2. This looks like it's for the K1, but this is a K1 bike and these were the air screws in there. Now I can't really explain why this is the case, because if you go into the parts fiche for a 71 CB750, which is a K1, that comes up as carburetors K1, K2. If you go into a K2, which is the next year, you find it also says carburetors K1, K2. So both parts fiches apparently show, or appear to show, identical carbs and identical parts, except for these and maybe perhaps a few others, between the K1 and the K2. But these are most definitely different. Now, a lot of times this is because of part revisions. The part number is revised, but the part remains the same, or perhaps very, very slight differences or changes to the part. In particular, electronic parts. A lot of times they're upgraded. But in this case, there's two different hits, like I said, on the internet, eBay and so forth, for the K1 and K2 when you put all those numbers in. And they most definitively show a different air screw that coincides with the appropriate number and the year of the bike, K1 and K2. So my assumption at that point was that these are the incorrect air screws. These are the correct air screws. So that's the first thing I did. I changed the air screws over to these. I set them for one turn out. I'll go ahead and show you that clip right now, how it ran. So as you can see from that clip, it ran better, but it was still shying at an idle. So I said to myself, This has a jetting issue. I can't understand why, because I have verified there is no vacuum leaks anywhere, so I don't really know why. And the real funny thing was when I put these air screws in, the solid ones, the ones without the hole in it, the synchronizer showed a lower intake impulse. It was up around 14 centimeters of mercury, and it should be up about 20. And I said, what in the hell?
What the hell?
Why would that be the case? So I said, you know, that is again indicative of, in my experience, a lean condition as far as jetting goes, but I still can't explain why. So anyway, we'll leave that for now. And these are the original jets that were in there. These are the 42s that came out. Now you'll notice, compared to this jet, this is a 48, not a 45. What I have in there is 45s. I bumped it up one step. Now you can see the difference in length between these jets. Overall, from here down where they shoulder into the car body, they appear to be identical. I measured these diameters up, make sure they're correct diameters, and I measured the thread diameter up. This thread's slightly bigger and this thread's slightly smaller, but it has the same pitch. And that's just a manufacturing difference. These, the 45 version that are in the bike threaded in just fine and tightened up just fine. I can't explain the difference in the length. I do not know why. When you go on any website and you, again, use these part numbers, not these, but the part numbers for the jets, which you can still get these OEM, but they would be the more modern equivalent of them. They show the shorter ones, which are 28 millimeter long overall. So how long are these guys? It's not easy to do this one-handed. These are about what, 32, 34? And again, these are 28s. And the only ones I can ever find online that have any reference are the 28 millimeter ones. Even if you go, yeah, they're 28s. Even if you go and find, well, I can't find any new old stock jets on like eBay, but any place that you can buy jets from that are original K-hin jets at least, they're all referencing the 28 millimeter long variety and not this 34 millimeter long variety. And again, it's measured from stem to stern. So I can't explain that. I don't know why. These jets are 100% open. I verified that twice. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no blockages. They are 42s. It's supposed to have 40s, and I went to 45s, and I really can't explain that either. So right now I'll show you the clip with the air screw change and the jet change to 45, and you'll see how it runs now. And that'll be essentially the final running condition because I got it all synchronized and everything. Last couple of bits. I got everything back together as far as the synchronizer's taken off, and I got these port plug screws put back in. I forgot to mention on that second clip that that was a start without any choke. I didn't use any choke or anything on that to start it up. So that was a really good test in my opinion, because this thing wouldn't even bark off hardly at all with the choke on before. We're going to cover all these problems that I'm about to tell you just briefly on in a second video. I'll explain that here in a second. But as far as the carbs go, the other problem I had here was these stinking drain screws just keep leaking, or kept leaking. I could not get these to stop leaking no matter what I did. I put the original, aluminum crush washers back in there. They didn't work. I even made some copper ones. I had to machine an arbor up so I could turn down smaller diameter, because these fit into a little area that's machined in the bottom of the float bowl where the drain is. So I machined these down. I tried those. They worked at first, but then I had to take carbs off like 2 more times to get all this jetting shit straightened out. And when you take those off and they spin a little bit, the problem is, and I'll go into this in greater detail in that video, location where the screw goes, it's got a flat that's machined in to the float bowl at a weird angle. It's a compound angle. And that is, on a couple of them, are chowdered up from over the years, people taking these screws in and out. So the crush washers are only going to work once anyway. When you go to take them out again, they turn and they won't crush in, they won't seat in. If you use a brand new one every time, it might work. I came up with a different way to do it, and again, you'll see it in a second video that I'll eventually put out on this thing. The other major problem I had was with these fork covers from that, what is it called? YAMIA 750, YAMIA750.com, that place right there. I'm going to tell you right up front that I am not impressed at all with the parts that they provided for this bike. And again, I will put all that crap in a second video, and I think what we're going to do in that video is we'll take a ride on this thing too. Because I do have the replacement tank, but I have too much left to do to try to squeeze it in this video. It would take too long. I'd really like to get this video up, at least something up on the channel for you guys to enjoy, hopefully enjoy it. And some extra footage, maybe just some bonus footage and stuff, will be in video number 2, along with hopefully a ride. And here's the beauty part. No leaky from the drainies. By the way, if you're ever doing these boots that go over the linkages on these carbs, to get these to pop on those little pulley looking things, I figured out the secret to it. You can see that that's on. What you do is you start this back edge here, or maybe it's the front edge, I don't know, and you pull it like this. You pull it toward the fork, the linkage, the bracket, whatever you want to call it. And what that's going to do is stretch out the back, and then it'll pop in. I actually have all of them in. You can see number 3 is in too, which I didn't know I could even do. So I got that done as well. All right, folks, that's going to be it on this one. Remember, watch for the second video on this, perhaps next week even. Take it for a ride and verify that everything works good. And then this job will pretty much be done at that point. So, this thing really gave me some anxiety early on. And this has been going on for a couple weeks now, but the video, of course, only covers a little bit in that space of time at various points. But early on in this job, I was getting anxiety because this thing was like giving me police bike flashbacks. So anyway, that's as good as I can get it to run. Now, if you're unsure about what I mean by that, you got to go watch the police bike videos. But it had a similar situation, if not identical situation, with a lean running issue at idle. And I just couldn't figure it out because I made some mistakes on that one. But it was a good learning experience for something like this, when something like this comes in and it's not running right at idle and it's behaving very similarly. We learn from our mistakes and try to correct the current situation based on that experience. So I think from that point of view, it worked out pretty well. So if you want to stick around and see part 2, you want to see other stuff that's going on around here, I definitely encourage you to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. You get notified when I put more stuff like this up. And we'll see you, I guess, on the next video. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't just repair, restore, and we'll see you then.